This film is about direct payments and purchasing your own support. This film is for individuals who are deaf-blind and for people with ushers, hearing and sight impairments. Direct payment is about individuals choosing to make decisions about how they get support from social services. Instead of a service from the council, money is given to individuals to pay for services to meet their social care needs. Some people get direct payments through an individual or personal budget. Having a personal or individual budget means that people know how much money has been allocated to meet their needs. People can then take this money as a direct payment. If someone decides to receive direct payments, they will have to think about how they will spend the direct payment. They may decide to employ people, use self-employed staff, an agency, or an organisation. This film may be very useful for people who pay for support themselves. This DVD has 9 different scenarios to help you think about direct payments and purchasing your own support. What are direct payments?
I've been informed about direct payments. What are they?
Direct payments are one way for you to get the social care support you need instead of the council providing a service for you. You can decide to take an amount of money that you should spend on meeting your needs.
What would be good about that?
Well, it may mean that you can have more choice and control about the kind of support you receive and when you receive it.
So, can anyone receive direct payments?
Direct payments are for people with disabilities, older people, parents of disabled children and of course carers. You have to go through the same assessment process to receive a service from your council or through direct payments.
What about all those other council assessments? Do I have to go through them too?
Yes, you'll have to meet the same eligibility criteria. Criteria are set by councils to decide whether they'll provide and fund support for you. You'll also need to be assessed for any charges you'll need to make towards the cost of your support.
What can I use my direct payments for?
You must spend your direct payments on meeting your needs as laid out in your care plan. So depending on what your needs or outcomes are, you could spend your direct payments on human support, such as a communicator guide or interpreter, activities, equipment, or minor adaptations. Remember, you can take direct payments to meet all of your needs, or you can combine some direct payments with some council services to meet your needs.
So, I can spend the money on anything I want, as long as it meets my needs.
Well, you will need to check with your social worker or your care manager that your plans for how to spend the money are okay. You'll also need to provide evidence such as receipts or invoices of how you spent your direct payments.
That sounds like there's paperwork involved. I'm not sure I want to take that on.
Well, you should be able to delegate some or all of the responsibilities involved in managing direct payments. But it's also important for you to still be making decisions about how your direct payments are spent.
What if I want to employ people using direct payments? Does that involve a lot of paperwork as well?
Yes, if you employ people, that means you become an employer, and you will need to fulfill your responsibilities. Again, you can get support to do this. In your local area, there should be a local direct payment support service that can help you. The National Centre for Independent Living, NCIL, they have a list of local support services too.
I would like to find out more about direct payments. Where can I go for more information?
Yes, you should ask your social worker or local council for information on direct payments. Sense also has some fact sheets about using direct payments. Remember that when you're thinking about direct payments, you should think about it as just one of the different ways for you to meet your needs. The choice is yours to make.
Direct payments. What are your rights?
I'm thinking about using direct payments, but I'm a bit confused about what my council should and shouldn't be doing.
Yes, I do know it can be confusing. It's good though that you're asking these questions now. It's much better to get things clear at the start so there are no nasty surprises later.
So, can you tell me what my rights are when I receive direct payments?
Well, it's probably best if I start at the beginning. First of all, there is Department of Health guidance on how councils should be offering direct payments. Now, this guidance is statutory. This means it must be followed by councils. This guidance sets out what rights individuals and councils have.
Okay, that's good to know. Do all councils implement direct payments in the same way?
Well, no. Each council, they're doing some things differently. But there are fundamental rights that all councils should follow. I'll start with assessments. The assessment for your needs should be no different, none at all, whether you want services from the council or direct payments.
But what about the deaf-blind guidance? Am I still entitled to a specialist assessment if I want to use direct payments?
Yes, now this is important. As a deaf-blind person, you're certainly entitled to a specialist assessment under what's known as the deaf-blind guidance. The assessment process should really look at how you'll meet any specialist needs if you decide to use direct payments. A support plan should then be written up.
I'm really not sure about whether I want to use direct payments or not. My social worker seems keen for me to have direct payments, but I want to know about all the options for meeting my needs.
Yes, essentially the choice is yours, but you should be given enough information to make an informed decision. This means you could receive services from your council to meet all of your needs, or you could decide to receive a combination of service, regardless of which, they should provide you with a service in the meantime. Remember, don't let the council tell you otherwise.
Some weeks, I seem to need more support than others. So, will direct payments be flexible enough to allow this?
Well, direct payments are supposed to let you have this kind of flexibility. This means you should be able to vary when you have your support. For example, some weeks you may need more support than others.
So, can I spend direct payments differently each week?
Well, you may need to check with your council that your plans are okay, and I'd suggest you do that. Some councils can be too strict about this. Now, if you think your council isn't being flexible enough, ask them to explain why.
So, are there deadlines for spending my direct payments?
Yes, councils ask people to do what's known as returns at different times. This is paperwork that tells your council how you spent the money. You should have spent your direct payments for the year at the end of what's known as the financial year. This is the end of March. Councils have the right to ask you to return any unspent direct payments from the previous year.
I've been told that I can't use direct payments to pay my family members to be carers. Is this true?
Well, there is a lot of confusion about this. The Department of Health say that it is possible to use your family if this is the best way to meet your needs.
The reason I ask is because my brother, who lives with me, supports me, and I was wondering if my direct payments can pay him.
Well, some councils are more open-minded than others, and some just say it's impossible, that it isn't right. You'll probably need to explain why your brother is the best person to meet your needs. For example, some deaf-blind people who use hands-on BSL or visual frame may only know of a few people that can communicate well with them, and these of course might be family members. This will mean they'll use their direct payments to pay for communication support for one of these family members.
Okay, but what if I'm not happy with direct payments and it isn't working for me? Will social services still have me on their books? Can I ask for a service from the council?
Oh yes, social services should still be monitoring and reviewing the support you receive, and of course that it is still meeting your needs. It's your right to decide that you don't want to receive direct payments anymore, and if you decide this, then social services should provide you with a service to meet your needs. But of course you'll need to give them reasonable notice before you stop direct payments. I think you should ask about what they would consider reasonable before you agree to receive direct payments.
Making sure you receive the right amount of direct payments.
I'm talking to my social worker about receiving direct payments. I would like to use them to pay for a communicator guide. How do I get the right amount of direct payments?
Yes, getting the right amount of direct payment is a very important issue for deaf-blind people. If you have specific communication needs, a service will probably cost more. The direct payment must be enough to meet your assessed needs. What does your assessment state? There may be some detail on there.
My assessment says that I should get support from a communicator guide with BSL who can communicate well with me.
You're right. In that case, this means your direct payment should be enough to buy support from a communication guide with the right level of BSL skills.
But my council have told me that there is a maximum amount for a direct payment. I don't think this will be enough to pay for a communicator guide with BSL.
Yes, the government guidance is clear that the money must be enough to meet your needs, definitely. Your council, any council, should not have a fixed rate. Not at all.
So I can pay whatever I like?
Well, no, not really. The amount must be reasonable. That means if you need enough to pay for BSL support, like a communication guide, it should be enough to cover for that.
But what about other costs? For example, if I decide I want to use my direct payments to employ someone, are there other costs associated with this? And will my direct payments cover this?
Now that's a good question. Your direct payment should cover the associated costs with buying the service you want. If you employ someone, it should cover things like national insurance contributions, recruitment costs, and employer's liability insurance. If you want to use an agency, this may have an extra cost, as they will add this fee to their costs.
So, thinking about costs, how do I know how much this will be?
Yes, it might be useful to talk to your social worker, local direct payment support service, or others that you know already use direct payments. The main thing to work out is how much you think it'll cost for you to get the service that you need before you agree to receive direct payments.
I now use BSL, but in the future I might have to use hands-on sign. As hands-on sign support is more expensive than BSL, how do I make sure that my direct payments cover the costs of this?
Yes, if your needs change, you are of course entitled to have a review of those needs. You should explain what has changed. Your circumstances might have changed, different sorts of support, so you'll need to explain why. This will mean you need a higher amount of direct payment.
Thanks. But what do I do if I'm still not happy with the amount of direct payments I'm being offered?
Yes, you should make it clear that the amount will not be enough. Some services are not aware of the needs of deafblind people, so they may not understand why you're asking for a high rate of direct payment. You might want to involve an independent advocate. You're also entitled to use the council complaint system in the same way you would if you were getting a service directly from them. If you're still having problems, you might think about seeking some legal advice. Now, Sense can give you some advice about making complaints or getting the appropriate legal support.
One-off direct payments for holidays, minor adaptations, leisure activities and equipment.
I've been told that you can receive a one-off direct payment. What are they and what can you spend them on?
Yes, that's right. They're what's called one-off direct payments. You could receive them to pay for such things as equipment, minor adaptations, holidays, and perhaps leisure activities.
How do I receive a one-off direct payment?
Well, to qualify for one, you'll need to go through a reassessment.
If my assessment support plan includes a holiday, what's good about taking a direct payment to pay for this?
Well, if you take a direct payment, you might be able to pick a holiday that includes your particular interests. It might be hard for social services to commission a holiday that is so personal to you though, but it's down to you.
I've been told that you can get a one-off payment to pay for minor adjustments to your home. What is considered a minor adjustment and what will my direct payment cover? I'm not sure.
That's right. A minor adaptation would be a small change to your home, for example. This might be a grab rail, perhaps a ramp, or some specialist lighting. If you get a direct payment, you might be able to pick up a design that works better for you, one that suits your needs.
If I get a direct payment for equipment, will I be able to get exactly what I want?
Well, I think it's important to think carefully when you get a direct payment for equipment. You'll need to make sure that the direct payment is sufficient to buy the equipment that meets your needs. It is important to try and find out how much the range of equipment costs.
But what happens if the equipment needs repairing? Who pays for this? Me or them?
Good question. I think you should ask social services about who is responsible for cleaning, maintaining, repairing and replacing equipment, as well as who owns it. It's important to be clear on this so that there are no nasty surprises. You should also ask what will happen if your needs change and you need different equipment.
Okay, I have one more question. I want to buy a pager that alerts me to a range of different things, but my assessment only covers a couple of the functions. Can I use a direct payment for some of the cost?
Yes, this is often called topping up and can be one of the advantages of using direct payments for your equipment. You can still have your council's contribution as a direct payment, but buy a model that has additional functions or is more expensive. But you must make sure the direct payment is enough to buy the equipment that meets your needs. A pager system, for example, can have additional benefits, but the assessed needs must be most important.
Employing people. Using self-employed staff. Using agencies or organisations.
Right. I've been offered direct payments to buy the support I need. I'm thinking about the different ways to get support. I've been told you can employ people yourself, use self-employed people, or use an agency or organisation. But I'm not sure what the best option is for me.
You're right. Those are the three main ways to use direct payments to get human support. There are different levels of responsibility for you and the people who support you, depending on which option you choose.
Okay, so if I decide to employ people myself, what does that mean?
Yes, employing people yourself can give you the most control over the kind of support that you receive. Employing people also means you become an employer, so you'll have to have a number of responsibilities.
Responsibilities? I might need to think about that.
Well, it is a decision that you should think carefully about, but there are deaf-blind people and families who successfully employ staff themselves. There are some things, though, that you should do to make it more likely that things will go well. The first one is you should be clear about what the role of your support staff is. You could write a job description, a personal specification for the role perhaps. The job description covers tasks and duties that you expect staff to carry out. The personal specification says what skills, knowledge and experience you'd like the staff to have. Secondly, make sure that you're fulfilling your obligations as an employer. Think about a number of things. Potentially there's a contract, tax issues, national insurance contributions. Then there's holiday pay, sick pay, maternity and paternity leave, of course. You'll also need to manage the whole process for yourself, the people you employ and those around you. That's important.
Okay, thanks. So what about self-employed workers? How's that different?
Well, self-employed workers agree to work a number of hours for you, but will not be employed by anyone. Now this means that they have to manage a lot of their own administration. This can be a positive for you, certainly, as it means you'll have to do less paperwork. It also means you're both free to end it, so remember to do this. Firstly, check if they have an individual tax reference number. If they do, then that means they can be self-employed. Secondly, be very clear that you're using them on a self-employed basis rather than employing them yourself.
So what administrative tasks do they have to do?
Yes, they have to pay their own tax and national insurance contributions, as well as organising their own liability insurance.
So I'm free from any responsibilities? Great!
No, not exactly. You will still need to manage them while they're working for you and ensure that they're working in a very safe environment.
Okay, so I guess using an agency or organisation means I'm pretty free of any admin responsibilities. Do you think it might be a good idea for me to ask an agency to provide me with the support I need?
Well, you're right. If you use an agency or an organisation, they do all of the administration for their staff. However, using an agency can mean you have less choice about the support you receive and indeed who supports you. I think it's important to talk to the different agencies in your area to find out, can they provide the support to meet your needs, and see what kind of service they could potentially offer you. Find out how much each agency costs. I would also say in some areas there may not be much choice of agencies with the right calibre of staff. Perhaps they haven't the right skills. So why not ask a certain set of questions? The first might be, can they provide you with the same member of staff on each occasion? That might be important to you. Secondly, what training and support do they give their staff? How do they check their staff, the quality of service that they provide? Do they cover staff absence? How do they manage that? That's worth considering. And are they registered with the Care Quality Commission? That might be something that you would consider too. What about their last inspection rating in terms of the quality of service that they provide? On top of all of this, you should still ensure that the working environment is safe for agency workers. That's important too.
I was wondering whether I could combine these different options. For example, I'd like to employ some people myself for some of the time and then use agency or freelance workers for more short notice support.
Yes, that's an interesting idea. It should be possible to use your direct payments in this way, but you'll have to make sure that the direct payments cover the cost of purchasing support.
Job applications and interviews.
I'm ready to start looking for people to support me. Where should I advertise?
Yes, just hang on a moment. First of all, can I just check that you've thought enough about the kind of support you'd like?
Well, I'd like a communicator guide.
And, go on.
What do you mean?
Have you thought about the skills or personal qualities you'd like them to have? It's going to be hard for you to get the right kind of support if you're not a little bit more specific. It might be helpful to think first about the kind of task you'd like support with, and you can put this in a job description.
Okay, well, I need a communicator guide to support me with daily tasks outside the home, as well as to attend leisure activities. This involves using BSL in guiding.
Okay, so thinking about the personal specification, what sorts of qualifications or skills do you think they might need?
Okay, well, they need to have at least BSL level 2, some guiding skills, especially for me in the evening or at night time.
Good. We're getting a little bit more information together. Right, one tip. Before you finalise the application form, why not keep a diary for 1 or 2 weeks? Now this is going to help you identify the tasks that you need support with. Anyway, how about skills related to the activities that you've mentioned so far?
Well, sometimes it would be great to get support from someone who understands money, and perhaps someone who could drive a car. Not everywhere I need to go is on bus route.
Great. That's a clear list of some of the formal skills you'd like the member of staff to have. Now, how about their personal qualities? What they're like as people, for example.
Well, I'm not really mind about this, as long as they can take instruction from me and can support me safely.
Okay, I do know what you mean, but it might be a good idea to include some information on personal qualities. These can be particularly important if you end up in a tricky situation.
Okay. Well, I did have an incident once when a train was cancelled and my communicator guide couldn't really cope with the change of plans. It would have helped if he'd been better at coping with unforeseen circumstances.
Well, there you go. That's one important quality. I know communication guiding can be hard work. Do you think you'd like your guide to have any particular qualities to help them manage with this?
Well, I think they'd need to be patient, enthusiastic, and honest. I need to know if I'm asking them to do too much.
Okay, how about the way that they work? I'd suggest it can be useful to include some personal qualities that in particular relate to this.
Well, I'd need a communication guide who is reliable and punctual, I suppose.
Great, that sounds like a good start. You'll probably want to add a few things to the list, so you may end up having to decide which skills, which qualities are most important or essential, and which ones are optional or desirable.
So, I guess it'd be worth making a list of things that I think are essential and the things that are desirable.
Exactly. And you can structure the personal specification like that by listing the essential items first and then the desirable ones. You can use the job description and specification to recruit staff to employ yourself, as well as looking for freelance or self-employed staff.
So, what if I want to use an agency? Do I just have to take whatever they offer me?
No, I think you could still use these ideas as a checklist, particularly when you're contacting agencies to see whether they can provide you with a service to meet your needs. It'd be a useful checklist.
Okay, but if I do decide to employ people or use freelance staff, where should I advertise?
It depends on what is available to you locally. It might be useful for you to think about the best way to try to advertise to people with the right skills. Of course, in your case, that's BSL. Here's some general ideas. Firstly, you could go to your local direct payment support service. Secondly, a local disabled or deaf people's organisation, your local newsletter, online group or newsletter, your local job centre, college, newspaper, or perhaps shops.
But you've made me list all this information. How can I fit it all into an advert?
Well, you can't. You need your advert to be catchy and short. You can send the job information pack to anyone who responds.
Okay, so what should I put in the advert?
There are 4 key things to include. The type of work you'd like them to do, an idea of the number of hours you'd like them to work, the rate of pay you may pay them, and I appreciate this may vary depending on what skills that they have, and how they can contact you for more information. It's probably better just to include a telephone, text phone, email or fax number perhaps, rather than your home address, as you probably don't want to advertise this to the whole world. You could give people a rough idea of the area you live in though. That'd be an idea.
Okay, but where will people send their completed application forms if I haven't provided my address?
A good question. You might prefer to use a PO box number, or it might be possible for you to use the address of a local organisation such as the Direct Payment Support Service.
I have to say, I'm quite nervous about interviewing people. How will I make sure that I ask the right questions? And what if they ask me something quite tricky?
Yes, don't worry, it's quite normal to be nervous. I was really nervous the first few times I interviewed people too. But it really helped for me to arrange interviews in a place I felt most comfortable. I also asked a friend to sit in on the interviews and give me a second opinion. It's really what makes you comfortable is the important thing.
But if I just ask them questions, will I really be able to judge how good they're going to be supporting me?
It might be useful for you to ask them to support you to do a simple and safe task. You'll be able to judge their skills as well as how well they listen to your instructions.
I've heard that when recruiting staff, I have to think of equal opportunities. What does that mean?
Yes, laws exist to prevent people discriminating against other people for specific reasons. They may be someone's race, their gender, disability, sexual orientation, and of course, age.
So I can't make any choice about who supports me, even if I have a preference.
Well, this doesn't mean that you can't make some choices about the kind of person you would like to support you. But you will need to make sure that you are making this choice within the law. Ask your local direct payment support service for advice.
Managing and supervising staff.
I employ a communication guide myself, and I'm finding it a bit difficult to manage them. Do you have any tips? I don't feel like I'm a very good boss.
Well, firstly, I don't think you should feel bad about this. Employing and managing people are a new thing for a lot of people who use direct payments. I think the fundamental thing is to have a clear and honest relationship with staff you employ yourself. This is the same for when you use self-employed or agency staff too.
Okay, thanks. So, what steps should I take to make sure our relationship gets off to a good start?
I know some of this might seem obvious, but as you say, it is really important to get off to a good start. You should be clear with staff about when you'd like them to support you and give them an idea of the tasks they will support you to do. It would be a good idea to draw up a list of guidelines or house rules about what you think is acceptable behaviour for both you and your staff. It's important to chat about these early on. For example, people who support you may know personal information about you, you'll probably want to make sure they keep this confidential.
Right. Another thing I find difficult is actually giving people orders. It doesn't come naturally to me. What shall
I know. Again, this is something that many direct payment users are not used to doing. It's better if you think about it as delegating tasks. This is assigning jobs to people. This is generally much easier if you have a clear relationship with staff. Some people find this easier if they establish a set routine or have a checklist for some tasks. This means you don't have to feel like you're always giving orders.
Sometimes I have trouble trying to find the time to actually sit and discuss things with staff.
I know this can be challenging, but having time to chat can be really useful and make things easier in the long term. It might be useful to have regular supervision time that you can both review how things are going and talk about how they might be improved too.
Yeah. It's just very hard feeling like you're always sort of picking fault in the staff.
Yes, I agree. That's why I think it's important to try and praise staff when they have done something you are particularly happy with. This often helps them remain motivated and feel that they are developing their skills. Even if they are family or friends, people will still need encouragement and of course reassurance that they are supporting you well.
I mean, sometimes the staff and I can get quite cross and argue about what kind of support I want. What are the best ways to overcome this kind of conflict?
Well, all the things I've mentioned should help to prevent conflict arising. But if things get a little bit more difficult, it can sometimes be useful to go back to a member of staff's job description or those house rules to help clear up the situation.
I'd really like to give my staff some training, but how do I actually make this happen?
Well, it depends on what kind of training you mean. You need to think about whether you need to pay for the training and if you have sufficient funds to do so. There may be some free courses, and some training could be done on a computer, for example. You will have to think about whether you can give your staff time off from supporting you so that they can attend the training. If you use self-employed or agency staff, you can suggest they attend the training too. I'd suggest you contact Sense for further information on training to support deaf-blind people.
Managing risks.
I think I'm going to start using direct payments, but I'm not sure about how to make sure the services I buy are safe.
Okay, don't worry. I can give you some advice on how to make sure both you and the people who support you are safe. It's important to think about health and safety. This is about making sure that neither you or others are taking an unsafe number of risks and the working environment is safe.
Okay, so that's general health and safety, but how about making sure that the people who support me are safe to use?
Well, this varies depending on how you get the support you need. If you employ people yourself or you use freelance workers, you may want to do a higher number of checks than if you use an agency or an organisation. That's because these will have carried out their own checks, but it's important that you still ask about that. Checks should include a check on police records.
So once I've had a police check done, I can be pretty confident that all's okay.
Well, that depends on what the check shows up. You may also like to follow up the references that prospective staff have given you. You may also ask for a 5-year history. This could cover their employment, educational background, and account for any gaps that they weren't working.
Okay, I was thinking about getting a second opinion from a friend of mine. What do you think?
Yes, it may also be good to get a second opinion from someone that you trust. You might also want to check out the certificates for the qualifications that people say that they have.
How about anything I can do on a regular basis to make sure things run smoothly?
Yes, it's also to have systems in place to minimise risks. That's worth considering. These might be having regular staff supervisions. Supervisions is about having some safe time for both you and your staff to discuss what has been going well and what potentially could go better. You should also think about a plan for emergency cover when staff are absent, especially at short notice.
Okay, but I guess sometimes things go wrong however much you try to reduce risk.
Yes, you're right. That's why it's important to make sure you're covered for accidents. For example, if you're employing people, you should also make sure that you have appropriate employer's liability insurance.
I think I'm okay with this, but some people might not want to have to deal with that risk. What can they do?
You're right. Some people may be a bit more nervous, and it's their choice to decide what level of risk they'd like to manage. They could use an agency or organisation or ask their social services to provide them with a service.
Managing direct payments paperwork.
So, I know I need to report back to social services about how I've spent my direct payments. But I'm a bit confused about what I need to do and what support I might need to do it.
Don't worry, I'll take it step by step. Firstly, you'll need to find out what support services there are for direct payment users. You'll need to think about whether you want to use them and if they are free of charge or not. If you will need to pay for some services, you'll need to make sure that your direct payment includes these costs.
Can you tell me a bit more about direct payment support services?
Well, each council should have set up or funded a local direct payment support service. They are set up to help direct payment users, like you, to successfully use and manage their direct payments. They vary in the kinds of support that they can offer.
So, are they the only choice for support?
Yes, there are some national organisations that support direct payment users, especially with payroll. You may be able to use them, but it's important you'll need to make sure your direct payment covers this particular cost.
Can I just have the direct payment paid into my bank account?
No, you'll need to open a separate bank account for your direct payments.
But even if I just receive a one-off payment for a piece of equipment?
No, sorry. If you are just getting a one-off direct payment, you shouldn't have to open another bank account only for that.
Ah, but if I decide to receive a regular direct payment, when will the council pay it in for me?
Yes, it varies. You may receive monthly, quarterly, or even yearly payments in advance. But whatever system your council uses, they should ensure that you have the money in time to pay for the services that you use.
What if I have some money left over? Will the council take it back?
If you have money left at the end of the financial year, which is the end of March, your council will be able to take it back.
But what if I just don't spend all of my direct payments within a certain month or quarter? Can I carry it over?
Well, each council seems to try to have different rules about this. The Department of Health guidance is clear in that it is only at the end of the financial year when councils should really be concerned about unspent money. But some councils may insist you spend the money within tighter time frames.
But isn't the idea behind direct payments that I should be able to spend the money flexibly?
So, you should challenge your council if they're saying you need to spend the money by a certain time.
I have a friend who uses a braille display for his computer. Do you think the paperwork is accessible to him?
Well, councils and direct payment support services have a duty to make information accessible. Your friend will need to ensure that others are aware of their access needs, but councils should take action to make sure that information is accessible.
SENS information on direct payments and purchasing your own support can be found on their website. Their website is www.sens.org.uk/direct payments. For the deafblind directory, their website is www.sens.org.uk/deafblind_directory. For the National Centre for Independent Living, their website is www.ncil.org.uk. For the Rowan Organisation's fact sheets on employing people, their website is www.therowan.org. For the Department of Health's guide to receiving direct payments from your local council, their website is www.dh.gov.uk.